Oh no.
Jordan Hall is already here. Jordan, what's up? Very active on the Discord.
How do they
But
do
yeah,
it so fast?
I don't know. I'm getting the echo. Hang on. There we go. Altan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's a little warm in here. My whole AC is out.
Oh my goodness.
We got
Yeah, we were talking yesterday and they were coming by. I had high hopes for you.
Yeah, I had high hopes too, but here we are.
Oh no.
I didn't hope high enough.
Yeah, that's not good. So me and Alton aren't that far from each other. I'm in South Carolina. I think I'm about an hour and a half from Alton in Atlanta. So I would not want to be without AC right now. But it is getting a little bit nicer in general.
If it had broken this weekend, I wouldn't be complaining at all. It's supposed to be down like 60 to 70.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty nice here right now. So I think we're around 70. But yeah, where are you located, Adrian? I actually don't know. We saw you in New York City last week, but
I'm in the Western Chicago suburbs.
oh, awesome.
Yeah, weather-wise, it's very similar to you guys. I think today is the final day in the 80s, and then we're going to start seeing a decline. So, Alton, I'm channeling hope your way on the AC fixture because that's rough.
I appreciate it. I think Zack wasn't powerful enough. So with your powers combined, maybe it'll magically work again.
Nice.
And the help of a technician, probably.
Yeah. That's secondary.
Yeah. I mean, the technician's probably doing most of the lifting. In Captain Planet terms, I think me and Adrian are like the Heartstone. Like,
yes.
The Heartstone never really did anything, from what I could tell. But yeah. So Chow is here to remind Alton what Dave Lennox did. Who's Dave Lennox?
Oh, well, Dave Lennox is the inventor of the gas furnace.
Oh, okay.
I only know this because the tech told me yesterday, because they try to sell us Lennox hardware.
Now that's secondary. History of HVAC.
Exactly. That's the real topic of this live. We lured you all here with CI.
And you just brought me back to my previous job where I worked in the smart infrastructure division of an engineering company. So I was, hearing all about HVAC, how it all worked and stuff, and just like, man, there's a lot that goes on with that stuff.
And they never taught you Dave Lennox?
Nope, I've never heard that name until now.
Well, there you go. Well,
AC should break more often, and then I'll have a technician over to teach me about him.
AC is kind of nuts. The CI HVAC crossover, classic cross promotion there. But yeah, we're here to talk NX for CI or CI for NX. Is that probably better? I think that's probably better because there's a lot of tools that we're able to provide given the kind of tool that NX is. In particular, one of the things that NX is kind of like a task runner. So if we know all your tasks, there's some stuff we can do there in terms of automating what your CI is. And I think for me, whenever I looked at CI, I always thought there was it was an industry primed for disruption because there's so much stuff in there that you kind of have to learn. There's a whole DSL for figuring out how to work with whatever provider you have and all these other things. But at the end of the day, really, what do you want to do? Well, we want to run some scripts or we want to run some tasks. I want to run my tests. I want to run my lints. I want to, make sure everything's working. That's pretty much it. So I think NX is interesting in particular in that it's perhaps providing a way for us to easily get to that. And hopefully that's what we'll see on the stream. First thing I want to do is, since we got Adrian here. So Adrian, you've been doing a lot of the CI stuff for Cisco recently.
I have. Recently, I would say since I joined Cisco. This January, it'll be 3 years for me. And ever since I joined, I've been kind of, getting my hands dirty with all that stuff.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. Yeah, well, I definitely want to hear your perspective there. Adrian was just at NXConf. So if you missed his talk, it was great. There was sound effects, dancing, shades. So it had the works. But yeah, I really liked the presentation. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting things that y'all were doing inside of that presentation that we could tell from Cisco. So I'd love to dig deeper. If we have more time after that, I do have a project over here. Scroll this way. That I made this one for one of our videos, for one on Playwright, and it doesn't have CI yet. So if we could add CI here live, that would be cool. I don't think it'll be that hard because of some of the tooling that we've got in place, but yeah, let's start with Cisco though. So to recap some of the stuff from your talk, Adrian, it sounded like what you were doing was you had, well, it was kind of like the problem that I had mentioned, where we have all these tasks that we want to run. And it sounded like what y'all were doing were setting up a container for each individual task and just running it. Is that right?
Pretty much, yes. So I mentioned in the talk how a common parallelization strategy known as binning, where developers of a monorepo would split their tasks by type. So like, hey, I'm going to have a parallel process that runs all my builds. I'm going to have a parallel process that runs all my lint, and the same thing for test. We took that just a little step further in the sense of, hey, we still have those jobs running in parallel, but within those jobs, we're adding an additional layer of parallelism where we have a container set up for each affected project. So I would say it's kind of like binning plus, if anything.
Yeah, so it's almost like a matrix on top of this kind of binning that I'm putting on here
Essentially,
slowly. Yeah. So like in addition to, so normally it would be like you'd have one machine doing our tests.
Yep.
Let's actually scroll in there to get it a bit bigger. But yeah, one machine doing our tests, one machine doing our lints, and one machine doing our builds. So I imagine what you must have been doing is before you got to this binning, you were doing something like running like NX affected.
Exactly
to get
right.
some sort of list of all the projects, and then you do test, lint, and build for each one of those. So we'd have sort of like this matrix effect of, you know, x many projects.
Yep. And we still do. So it started off in the sense of we would just run NX affected verbatim, and it would just run all the projects, you know, serially, how as affected would run. We realized that, so Circle CI is our provider. They have I won't get into too much like, you know, Circle CI specific stuff, but they have a mechanism where you can dynamically create your workflows. And we were able to use that ability by saying, all right, I'm going to, instead of running NX affected, I'm going to do print affected to understand what projects I have to run for. And then I'm going to use that dynamic power in Circle CI to create my workflow that will create that additional level of parallelism within our binning strategy.
Right. Gotcha. That's actually what I was trying to portray on the screen here. Print affected, not affected.
Yep.
But yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense. So this was Circle CI you were using to kind of get the output of print affected and then apply it to each one of these different tasks.
That's right.
Sounds like cool. Oh, I'm being a bad host and missing some comments in the chat. So let's wave to Teen real quick. Teen's one of the authors of a lot of our plugins. Adrian, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Teen's a really cool guy.
Pleasure to meet you virtually.
Nice. Yeah, and Brendan Ingham's here. Yeah, in particular, I feel like CI pain is one of the worst. I hope it's not, and I hope the CI pain isn't because of NX, Brendan. But let us know, and we'd love to like address any questions here. Stream Overlay Pro, another gentleman who was there at New York City at NXConf. So great to see you here again, sir. And Ilko, what's up, man? Nice to see you back. But yeah, so you mentioned, I think in your talk, going with a strategy like this. Obviously it's going to cut your time down, right? I imagine like for however, so this is like if there's n affected projects and you have these 3 things, you're spinning up 3n different containers.
Correct.
Imagine each one of those is going to have to do like npm install or some equivalent for their package manager to set things up. Is that right?
Thankfully, we knew that would happen right away, and we mitigated it in the sense of we run npm install just once, and then we cache the node modules in Circle CI. So that way they just restore from cache. You don't have to reinstall for every single container. Thank goodness, because installing dependencies takes minutes for us. So
cool. Yeah, that's interesting. How long does it take you to actually restore the node modules from cache? I imagine it is faster than doing like a straight install, but
good question. Let me take a look real quick because I
cool.
generally don't pay attention. I just kind of fire and forget.
Right.
So if we restore from cache, if I'm looking at an example job.
Oh, someone had the same exact question as I. Good job, Casey.
47 seconds approximately. This is just one example that I'm looking at, but let's just say under a minute.
Okay, 47 seconds versus, could you give us maybe a rough time of the npm install?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
Wow. So that's a good increase for sure. I think like in general, you're saving yourself compute time there by doing the cache. You're not really saving yourself wall time because like if you had done 10 different machines here, I imagine like you start all of them at the same time. Is that correct? Okay, cool.
Yep.
So that way like you're actually like probably increasing wall time by doing the caching because you're saying first we do 5 minutes, then every different server has a 45-second penalty that they're paying, but then we're ready to go. So we're saving on compute. We're paying a little bit in wall time, but it's not too bad. So
correct. What does become bad is, as I mentioned in the talk, the more projects you end up in your mono repo, because we initially set it up in the sense of for every affected project in one of those 3 bins, we're creating a container. Once you get to the hundreds, it gets expensive. And so that was like the big, everybody sound the alarms. We need to fix this right away because we're just, money's getting swallowed away. So what do we do to fix this?
Yeah, we've got some interesting questions here in chat from Caleb Weber here. So are you using cache or workspaces for that caching? I'm actually not that familiar with Circle CI. I always use GitHub Actions. So
Circle CI has a dependency caching blog post that we relied on in terms of figuring out how that works. If I fetch that real quick.
Sure.
Caching dependencies. Yeah, so we use cache keys. I don't know how to answer your question in terms of if it's this or that, but if you just look up dependency caching in Circle CI, we just set up a key and map it to a file path, in this case, node modules, and we're able to restore using that same key.
Gotcha. Are you doing anything where you're like building that key based off of the package lock? Or
yes,
Okay.
So they have a utility function for checksum. So we do a checksum against the package lock JSON. So if that ever changes, it gets invalidated. We get another one, and then we store that, and then to be retrieved for later jobs.
Cool. Sounds like we answered the question there. So that's awesome. Yeah, Caleb, you're throwing some shade on Azure. Yeah, that's always rough.
You said it, not me.
Well, there's a lot of node modules is like the black hole. I'm not super surprised that restoring things from cache takes a little bit because that's still a network call. So yeah, and Caleb, just to recap here, like what we're showing on screen here is kind of maybe it doesn't make that much sense, but the first step is we're going to run nxprint affected. That's going to give us a list of all of our affected projects. And then we're going to create an instance of however many projects were affected, and we're going to create a container for each one, just run the tests, the lints, and the builds. So there's a couple things that come immediately to mind. The first one is, I imagine if we looked at y'all's task graph to make something like this work, it's probably got to be pretty flat, right? Like there's probably not much going on in terms of tasks depending on each other, correct?
For the only case, so for this example that you're showing, for build, we do build dependent libraries. So that's
Okay.
Yep. So we do have, in terms of our monorepo setup, we have only a handful of applications and then a butt ton of libraries. Trying to follow the pattern of, put a lot of the work in the libraries. Apps are meant to be just the shell. And so if you're trying to build the app, you have to build all the libraries that the app uses.
Cool. So how many? I think you said you were up to like 400 projects right now.
So that was a snapshot in history. I think we're at 800 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is exploding. So I hope your bills aren't exploding. I guess that's
not at the moment. At least nobody told me so. So
okay. Well, cool. But yeah, that's definitely very interesting. So one of the things that's interesting about this is, you looking at your perspective, Adrian, since you've been on this like for the last 3 years, how much of your time, if you don't mind me asking, how much of your time have you put into the CI process, would you say?
a lot. I mean, if I were to like look back at my history at Cisco and kind of like put into categories in terms of what effort I put into each one, CI would probably be the largest bucket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm not complaining because I did like working on it. Like to me, it was a very interesting challenge, and I also saw the impact that we were making with each incremental improvement. Like developers like rejoice, and you're like, oh, small enhancement, yes, all right, let's keep it going. So I found fulfillment that way. So I liked working on it. However,
Yeah.
of course, there are tools out there. We can get into this later, NX
Yeah.
DTEs, and I think Altan can talk about the new thing that NX announced in NXConf. If we can use those, absolutely, let's do it, right?
Yeah. I think that's where I would love the conversation to go. Like mainly, I think a lot of the value that NX can bring is really in terms of, taking these things and kind of giving a package solution to them in the form of, pretty much what NX is. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that you were like you enjoyed the work doing the CI stuff. I think that's something kind of relatable. I think a lot of us get into this because we like the idea of automation and stuff like that. And like, what better way to do that than in CI? So
The only major drawback is maintainability, right? If something were to change, like for example, we recently underwent a transition to a new kind of release process, so we had to add additional automation. Given some of the constraints and how some of the release steps we want to perform, we had to kind of like rework a lot of the stuff that we had already, and it just added, extra things to consider. Revisiting tooling, especially like some of the NX affected commands that we had to run. So maintainability dependent on your organization and monorepo can become challenging, as it was recently for us. So that's why I would totally vouch for do the easy mode if you can.
Yeah. Well, that is good to hear, because that's what we're trying to represent. And I think like if you look at the solution we kind of have on screen here, so this is like, I think your words in your presentation was, this is DIY, do it yourself. Which, I mean, you're still using NX in this situation. Like you actually still have an NX monorepo. You had the PRIT affected command, so this was giving you some of the utilities that you could use if you wanted to build your own solution. However, like what we've done since this January is actually take a lot of our engineering, and we were all doing consulting. So Altan was off doing consulting. I was off somewhere else doing consulting for 80% of my time, and then we all got pulled in, and now Altan like runs a lot of stuff with NX Cloud, which I think NX Cloud has a really great solution to really giving folks the easy mode for all of this. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Altan, would you? I'm sorry, I feel like I haven't been included in the conversation. Do you want to talk about like some of the stuff you've been working on with NX Cloud here?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are familiar, but if you're not, NX Cloud has what we like to call distributed task execution. And this is kind of the easy mode that Adrian was talking about and something that we really strive for. So, because NX already understands how all of your tasks are interrelated, we can actually much more efficiently divide up your tasks in between multiple machines. And so, what that means for you as a developer is kind of two big things. One, as your workspace grows, you don't really need to change a whole lot about your CI configuration. Since NX is aware of all of your projects, you can just tell it, run what's affected, and we're going to give it to 5 machines or 3 machines or even 20 machines, right? And NX can say, okay, well, last time I ran this, we had, let's say with Adrian's, let's say it was 3 months ago, we had 400 projects, but now somebody's been going crazy with the generators and we have 800 projects.
Someone's been going crazy with the generators over at Cisco for sure.
Take away the generators.
Take them away.
Hey, you guys keep providing these handy tools such as generators. Everybody keeps using them.
Sorry.
So now we have 800 projects, but the actual work that needs to be done to update your CI to support this is very minimal. In a lot of cases, once you've got it configured, the only thing that you'll need to change is how many agents you're spinning up. And even that's optional. NX will be able to say, you know, whether you have 2 or 200 agents, we can divide your tasks up. You wouldn't want to use 200 agents if you only have, 5 projects, but 800 and you've got the budget, go ahead.
Yeah.
And so that's one part, is that it scales for you. And then the second thing is that it stays much more maintainable. So even if you add, you change out your linting or you change out your testing framework, right? NX is actually agnostic to all of this stuff. So to NX, a test is a test, regardless of you're using Karma or you're using Jest or you're using vtest, right? It's all the same. And so it gives you a lot more flexibility from a developer experience point of view.
Yeah, I think this is kind of where you hit on with your talk, Adrian, where you had a DIY solution. I think like if we actually look at like what this solution represented, I don't think you can get much faster than that in terms of like wall time. Just because like you're literally binning or sharding down or however you want to call it down to like the most granular you can get. So this would be almost as if I believe we can do this. Altan, you might have to you might have to help me figure out how exactly to do this, but I think we could do something where we did like an NX print affected, and that would give us the number of projects that were affected. We could say, okay, let's allocate 3 times that number of agents, and let's set those up with DTE, and I think it would be essentially the same. Is that if you put staging and those kinds of things out of it? But
this is a really interesting question. So I think that naively that works.
Mm-hmm.
But where this will get challenging is in a real project, most of the time you're going to have a dependency tree that is both rather wide and rather deep. And so if you go ahead and you use NX show affected, or NX show projects dash affected, as Gregory has helpfully mentioned in the chat.
Yeah. Sorry, Gregory.
Yeah. Use this new one. Don't use print affected. So if you use NX show projects,
let me go fix it on the graphic.
Yes, perfect. So when you get your list of projects, that'll be awesome. So the list of projects is actually accurate. But what it doesn't take into account is your dependencies. And so that's one of the special things about DTE, is that we know what your projects depend on. And because of this, if you were to do it naively and just grab all of your projects and assign one machine out to each of them, if you have something that it's at the very top of your tree, that let's say it depends on 15 shared libraries, you've got a very large app, that's going to end up rebuilding all of those 15 shared libraries on that machine. And so your wall time will actually be much longer there. It might be equivalent to the total time you're going to spend running, but all of that previous time is wasted duplicate compute. And so especially when you get into a position where you might have a single large shared component library that's got your whole design system in it, or something that you haven't split out into libs yet that takes a minute to build. That single minute across, let's say, 20 machines, you've got 20 extra minutes of compute in there that's just completely unnecessary. So it will work. It's not super efficient. And that's where we think that we can help, because it's both automated and we try to make it as efficient as possible.
And furthermore, I want to make sure that this is also not overlooked. NX Cloud gives you remote caching, right? So if at any point, you see that your jobs need to rebuild or do anything, or a dependent project, if you will, if it's there in the cache, pulled right away, it's done in seconds, right? And so DTE is set up to leverage that very efficiently, especially as we've experienced when we were trialing NX Cloud earlier this year.
Right. Like, so I imagine, Adrian, just like the way you had been describing this, because you had mentioned that you actually like had buildable libraries where you would but if you were doing like this strategy, unless you were delaying some of those containers from being spun up until like the things they depended on finished, it didn't sound like you were. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that one more time?
So let's say you had project A that depended on project B. Would you delay spinning up the container for project A until project B was done building?
No, we actually end up with a duplicate build. So project
Gotcha.
A would determine, because when we did, I'll use the correct command, show projects, it would show project A is there, and so is project B, right? It would not know that project A depends on project B,
Right.
and that if you build project A, it will build project B. Our CI was not that smart, or at least our setup was not that smart. So we would have a container that would build project B, and the container that will build project A, but before it builds project A, it would rebuild project B. Unless
Gotcha.
somehow with timing, if caching were enabled, it would just fetch from there, right? That would be our only saving grace in that regard. But yeah, that's one thing that we were hoping to mitigate with DTEs when we played around with it, and we did, right? So
yeah. Well, and just the to your point too there, Adrian, like the remote caching, I feel like is such a powerful tool, because if you've had to mess around with CI, like it sounds like a lot of people in the chat have been doing, highlighting Jordan's comment here. I don't think CI is fun. I think it sounds fun. And then you get into it and then it's terrible. But like when you do this kind of caching where you're like caching artifacts, it's a pain. Like to figure out a build and then figure out an artifact to store or something like that, and then figure out then how to pull it out of that cache or pull that artifact out of GitHub Actions. I've always not enjoyed that whole process, and that's kind of just all transparent here with remote caching, because NX Cloud is like serving as a central hub to say, hey, I've actually got that artifact. Like you don't need to remember, you don't need to do anything to figure out how to pull it out or say that it's there. You just like tell NX, not NX Cloud, but NX, hey, this is the output of that build. So
and more, I think also it's important to know that it's not just build artifacts, right? So kind of give a real world example. I was actually kind of, I don't know if relieved is the right word, but I'll just stick with that for lack of a better term, to hear when I was at NX Conf and speaking with these other folks in enterprise organizations, like, yeah, E2E is slow, it doesn't matter the framework, like depending on how you set up your test, it can take a long time to run, as it does for us right now. When we were on a trial with NX Cloud, so we had a situation where some of our E2E tests were a little flaky. So if you had the E2E job run, it would take a substantial amount of time. You realize that a test flaked and the job failed, great. Now you have to rerun and wait for that same amount of time. Remote caching cached a lot of the results already. There is no like file outputs yet. It's just a matter of actual test results. NX remote caching takes that into account, stores it, and rerunning E2E took like just some minutes instead of the usual amount of time. This was such a game changer for us when we realized that, like, holy crap, like yes, let's fix the fake flaky test, but until we get there, this would do for now.
Yeah, we actually hit that when I was working with Tanstack Query. They had some like flaky tests. I guess for them it was unit tests, but they had so many projects that that it was really helpful to go out and just like the first try, we'll just do all 30 of the test tasks. And then like the flakiness was usually relegated to like 2 or 3 of the different libraries. So the way it would work is NX Cloud would work as like the cache to just like so it made it so the second time we ran it, all of them just immediately completed except for the ones that had the flake in it. So
Exactly.
we actually just use the GitHub retry action that's out there. So it was really easy to set up. We're just like, okay, we'll run it up to 3 times. If it's more than 3 times, it's probably an actual problem. So
And Circle
So,
CI
yeah.
is similar. You can retry a workflow, just rerun the failed jobs. And so that's exactly what would happen is like it would run everything, but everything that passed in the previous run pretty much passed instantly thanks to caching. And we're just, retrying the stuff that flaked.
Yeah. So Altan, I think I've probably bent your ear about this before too, but have I talked to you about my crazy idea for end-to-end tests and like
Yes.
sharding them using NX? So yeah, that's something that I've been intrigued by. So I had Adrian, I had a proof of concept that I put out I think like a year ago that was like using a lot of these the end-to-end test tools. Like I think Cypress has this. I know it's Playwright does. They have a way of just listing all of the different individual tests, end-to-end tests that exist inside of your project. And then you have a way of using that output to individually run each individual one. So I had a proof of concept here that was essentially just taking like the output from these CLI tools provided by like Cypress or Playwright and would like turn each one of those into a task inside of a project JSON file, which made for a really messy project JSON file. But what we ended up with was like these very small end-to-end tasks that would like be parallelizable using DTE in the sense that, well, okay, we have like hundreds of these end-to-end tests, but we have, I don't know, 8 agents going. So we can run 8 of them at a time. And as soon as one of them completes, like NX Cloud can pick up the next one. We can kind of keep going that way. And if we ever need to retry anything like that, we can do that. So yeah, it was a really interesting way of just like sharding out end-to-end tests in something of an automated manner. It kind of sucked because your project JSONs just got really big and you'd pretty much have to hit a button to I think I had a generator for this. I was just going to touch all your project JSONs to make sure like if you added a new end-to-end test, we'd need to find it and we need to like add that back into your projects, which was unfortunate. But the new dynamic task API that we have now, that would be a really cool way of doing this kind of thing where we could just like put this into that dynamic tasks API that NX exposes now, and we won't have to clutter project JSON files anymore. So
And you guys also have feature-based testing now. That's something that we've been playing around with recently, and we only got it working with one project right now, but should we get opportunities to move that giant E2E app project and kind of, distribute them across their appropriate libraries, that would just make the efficiency a lot better. It would also enable, so when we experimented with DTEs with you guys, we did not include E2E. Like, nope, we're afraid as to what might happen. So we just excluded that for the time being. But once we have feature-based testing throughout our libraries, go ahead, slap it in DTE. That it'll pick it up nicely and it'll go smoothly.
Very cool. Let me catch up on chat because I've been a bad host again. Got a question here from Ilko. How will DTE interact if you need an Azure CLI credential to run the tests? Interesting. I don't really know. I imagine, like, Altan, you'd probably know better, but I imagine if it's similar to GitHub Actions, you just like keep that secret inside of your like secrets stash inside of GitHub, and you'd essentially give all of your agents access to it, access to the secret. And not all of them are going to use it, obviously, just the ones that need it, but they'd all have it available to them.
Yeah, I think high level that's that's pretty correct. You would end up configuring it very, very similarly to if you were running everything on a single job. I think where it might get more hairy is if you need to do something like only certain tests need this. At which point I would say then you would probably set up like a dependent task through NX that is maybe checking if you're in CI, if you need it only in CI, or just to have it run all the time, and invoke that as a task dependency of your E to E test, and then it'll just be handled automatically for you in DTE. Because I think the important thing, and maybe this is a failure in our messaging, is a DTE agent is just a CI machine. It's just smart about what tasks it receives. And so anything that you can do in your normal pipeline setup is completely valid to do on a DTE agent context.
Cool. And yeah, one of the interesting things we saw the last time we had Altan here for an NX Live was like, you don't like a DTE isn't a singleton, like, or it doesn't have to be. You can have multiple DTEs going at the same time. We saw that last time so that we could like run all of React queries verification across all the different React versions that they cared about. And we actually did, each one of those had their own like DTE cluster. So each one had its own number of agents, had its own orchestrator, all those things. So if you wanted to do that with your E to E and like even stage it, so like you probably wouldn't have to stage it, but if you wanted to stage it that way, you could do it where like you finished one DTE cluster to do all your lints and tests and builds, and then you could after that start a new DTE cluster and do end to end. So yeah, I don't know if I'd advise doing that. Like, seems like probably better to just do DTE all in one and just say, well,
I second that.
yeah, don't do ETE until all the rest complete. Maybe if you really care about that. But I don't know. If it's me, I'd probably just throw. It's kind of interesting with DTE, like the idea of just like throwing things on the pile, if that makes sense. Like, let's just throw some more tasks on the pile and let DTE figure out, where these things go and how best to, what order to put them in.
And it's set up to figure that all out, right? So, I mean, that's exactly what it's designed to do instead of trying to do it yourself, which we have. So,
yeah.
I also want to point it out that because, Zach, what you just mentioned in terms of how you can approach some of these different solutions in terms of setting up multiple sets of DTEs or using the utilities of NS to kind of do it yourself. If anyone asks me what's your favorite thing about NX, I would always say the flexibility of your tooling, because as I mentioned, you can go easy mode, but there are, situations such as ours where you have to kind of start off hard mode. And that way you can incrementally improve and get to the easy mode eventually, right? But the tooling is all there. It can take some time to figure it all out, but when you do, man, like you're powering through your CI.
Yeah.
And just briefly, for docs discoverability, if anybody is interested in what Zack was describing, where you have multiple pools of agents, we refer to those as CI execution environments. So normally we would see those for things like, I have a React Native project and I need to run my E to E tests on Mac OS, and everything else can run on Linux. Or I think actually in the Cisco case, we've seen people that say, okay, well, we'll have a special environment that we use for our high-powered machines. And maybe things like our lint can go on a simple 2-core machine. And so you can have your pools of agents that way. And DTE can assign things out to those without much issue.
Yep.
Cool. Well, yeah.
Uh-oh, did we lose Zach?
We've lost the host.
Oh no.
All right. Well, I don't have control to show the comments, but while Zach is here, we can talk about some things that are in the comments. So
Sure.
from Eelco, we have: would you argue that even having E2E tests for specific sections of the app all being specific, however, would you suggest still having a scheduled nightly E2E test or E2E set to test the entire app? So I guess the question here is, if you have feature-based E2E testing that runs maybe on your PRs and merges, would you still suggest having a scheduled nightly E2E test? Do you guys have anything like that?
We don't. From our standpoint, I don't see us ever approaching something like that just for the sake of costs, right?
Mhm.
Our side, we have over 100 developers in our organization within Cisco. We have so many PRs going left and right. Should we have remote caching enabled, depending on what's affected, we think that would be plenty in terms of streamlining the process and just, getting your PRs passing CI or just, complete in CI as fast as possible. I think it would depend also on cadence and frequency. So I can only answer in our case. Personally, I wouldn't see the need to have a scheduled job like that.
Yeah, I think I can see it both ways. The biggest perk that I would see maybe is uh, if you ran nightly tests, but they were pointed towards a more live environment. So, like if you run your CI tests and or your E2E tests and your CI pipelines, and those are maybe pointing towards mock data or things that are less up to date, and then you do nightlies that are pointing into maybe a staging environment or something where the data is a little different. Maybe you'll get some different test cases. Or kind of you'll have more things like latency involved. You can get a little crazier
Yeah.
with the real worldness of the situation, but I don't think it would be required. I think generally if you've got high confidence in your testing from pipelines, then you should be good to go.
Yep, I agree with that.
Sorry, y'all.
Back from the dead.
I've had this problem. Okay, so you may have noticed right before I disappeared, I was touching my mic. The connection to my mic has become frayed, and apparently, if I ever lose connection to my mic, just like all of my peripherals just stop working. So, thanks, Ilko.
That's a very brittle environment.
It is. I need to fix this. I need to get a new, back from the Shadow Realm. I need to get a new cord.
That's unfortunate because you can't dance then. You can't be animated because now you risk moving your mic. It's like, oh, I'm dead again.
Yeah, Adrian's giving me a hard time because we had a good time at NXConf at the karaoke there.
Phenomenal time. You guys are a lot of fun, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, let's jump over to my screen here. Let me see if I can share it again because we're running out of time, and I want to show how easy this stuff is to do because we're talking about it very conceptually. And I definitely want to get it to a point where we can make this more solid. So I'm going to come back to, were you going to say something, Altan?
I was going to say, don't make any sudden movements.
I know. I'm being very careful about this microphone now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is going to get weird. But let's see. I did see this comment here from Abtaf. It looks like he's new to NX and wants to use Tailwind CSS in his project in libs. So maybe we can start by showing that, because a great feature of NX is using generators. So I'm just going to come into VS Code here. I hit Command-Shift-P. That's going to open what do you call this? Is this like the
command
task
palette?
Command palette? Thank you. Perfect. So I'll just start typing generate, and that will give me to this list of all the generators I have. So if I go to Tailwind, just start typing in Tailwind, we'll see there's actually this way of setting up Tailwind for your different projects. The project I'm looking at, we just have the NX React plugin installed. I think we have the same thing for Angular. I think we have the same for some others. But yeah, this should be a great way to get you there. Looks like it works for one project, but not for the others. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that, but if you post an example into the forum in Discord, we could probably take a look later. after the stream.
I
But
have
yeah,
never used Tailwind, so I would have had have no idea where to begin.
do you like the idea of it, Adrian? I'm intrigued by this.
I never really looked into it to have an opinion. So
Okay, fair
right
enough.
now we're just Angular and SCSS. So we have a
Okay,
design system. So that's kind of where we're at today.
gotcha.
You don't have strong opinions on things you don't understand deeply.
What is this, Adrian? Come
I
on.
think you're in the wrong industry.
All right, we can end the stream now. Thanks everyone.
No, okay, let's get to, so we're gonna pull up the same generate UI because for our use case, what we're looking at in this stream, what we want to add is CI, not necessarily Tailwind. I like Tailwind. I think it's great. So I would encourage you to check it out at some point, Adrian. And there's like some other similar tools that seem really intriguing, like Panda CSS. Definitely looks really cool.
Never even heard of that one.
It's
I
like
do like
types.
pandas though.
It's yes, me too. It looks like type safe styling for like a CSS and JS kind of solution. But
All right.
anyways, let's go into generating a CI workflow. And I want to do this for GitHub. So we're going to hit that. And I think
And
that's all I
everyone
need.
can see like how many providers you guys support, right? Like you have GitHub, we use the Circle CI one, GitLab is there, so
Yeah. So Altan, you may know this. We don't see NX workflows here yet. But
Not yet.
not yet.
So
Any
we
news
can.
you can share there?
Yep. So if you haven't seen already, I believe we actually have a docs page that I think is up. We'll maybe be able to link it in the chat. I can take a look for that, or you can take a look for that. But last week at NXConf, we announced NX Workflows, which is coming soon. The high level is that NX can now be your CI platform as well. So this will help you in a lot of ways. The most obvious one is that we'll be able to do super cool things with DTE that will be more difficult to achieve if you don't have as tightly of an integrated platform. So some of the things that we're looking forward to getting going there are things like dynamically sized agent pools, dynamically resource allocated agent pools, and just kind of making the all-around CI experience work as tightly with your projects as the core of NX does. So it's super exciting. I'm sure we'll have more to share in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah.
And we have a comment. What's costs comparing to GitHub Actions? Jordan, we don't have finalized costs yet, but the goal is to be right around there. So super comparable to existing providers, but with added benefits. So I don't have anything to guarantee at this stage, but it's not going to be anything crazy.
So one thing that was
And
mentioned at NXConf, I'll let you go right after this, Adrian.
sure.
But Alton, I don't know if you know more about this, but the idea of using volumes as a way of like getting around that cost of like npm installs versus cache restoring or anything like that. That we've seen is we're getting to the point where this is becoming one of the longer sticks in the CI pipelines for a lot of people. Like Adrian, I think you mentioned 5 minutes for y'all. So
Yep.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have the ability to do is when you're working with a more generalized kind of managed machine solution, like you might see with GitHub Actions or Circle CI, you have a lot of flexibility, but it comes at a cost because they're not purpose built. So with NXCI, if you say something along the lines of, I have 5 agents and I want to spin them up and they're all identical, we can actually start getting into things that would really be micro optimizations on other platforms. So some things that we're really looking into making perform well would be things like your node modules caching, things like initial setups and making sure that that's as fast as possible. And that's just because we'll have a more, like I said, tightly integrated kind of situation between what actually runs in your CI and what's configured in your workspace.
And I was just going to follow up when NX announced this at NXConf. A number of you guys went up to me and said, hey, do you think this is something Cisco could find value in? At first, I wasn't sure because there's this notion of it can ultimately replace your CI. in our case, we cannot get rid of Circle CI, right? We're just one monorepo, but we're not the only project within our organization. We have a bunch of Java projects and they all use Circle CI. That's not going away. And then I was reassured by you guys that, well, just like what we talked about with DTEs, it's not all or nothing. You don't have to be like, all right, you're all in on this and that's it, you can't use anything else. You can find a flexible way to incorporate it in whatever way you need to make your CI as efficient as possible. So for everyone watching, like, depending on what your kind of situation is with CI in terms of what you cannot use, still be on the lookout for news around NX workflows, because you could find a way to use it and make things better for you. So
Right. I think there's there's a difference between the main job here and then manage agents. So you could do some sort of hybrid approach there where you're maybe using CI for agents, but NX workflows for the main. So
That's exactly right.
cool. Well, there's options there. But let me hit generate here so we can see what happens. We've been stalling here for time, but there we go. A beautiful file was created for us. Let's check it out. There we go. So that's it. I think we're ready to go. I'm actually not sure for this project. It's been a little bit since I last touched it, but I believe if I look at like multiplayer, I believe we're probably going to want to add another target in here for testing. Maybe not. I don't know. Let me just pull up NX console here. I'm pretty sure I had some other target names. So that's kind of what I'm looking for right now.
You could put an E2E if you think that's ready for it.
Yeah. Well, okay, there it is. So there's an E2E target on our multiplayer ETE. I think single player has an ETE as well. So let's do what Adrian said, and we'll just like take this, and I'll do ETE. Think we want to do like parallel equals 1 for this, because some of my end-to-end tests are actually like spinning up like an API that's going to clash with each other if I try to do more than one at the same time.
And for those wondering what that means, so that parallel flag within the task command is how many projects to run for at a time. It doesn't correspond to the number of agents.
Correct. So this is almost like how many tasks to run on the agent at once.
Yep.
I think.
Exactly right.
So yeah. And we can see here, we just set up for 3 agents. I think if we wanted to add more, like we just do that and we do this, and now we would have 5 agents. And we still have to pay GitHub for this, but I think that's pretty much it.
I think on line 17, agent count, there's a 3.
Oh, yes.
Yep, let's change that to 5.
There we go. So we just scaled up, y'all. Congratulations.
In what, 30 seconds?
Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to push this to main because I don't really care about this project so much. Let's try it. So we'll get, yeah, exactly. And get push, or we guess we got to commit first.
I'm a git flow diehard, Zach. I'm sorry.
I don't know what that is.
I'm with Zach. I typed this stuff out.
Cool.
Oh no, I mean we gotta have a branch. We gotta have a feature branch.
Oh, that, yes.
No,
we need some code review.
We
did review.
6
it
minutes.
Was live.
It was live. Yes, we caught it.
See what he was doing.
Put in the chat if you approve this PR.
Yeah, exactly. We have just send me an LGTM in the chat if this is good. It doesn't really matter because I've already pushed it, but yeah. So here's that project on GitHub right now. So I think if we come to actions here, we should see it running. So there it goes. I imagine we're probably going to see some failures here. Thank you, Caleb. And yeah. So yeah, we're seeing some failures here. I'm intrigued as to what this is, but oh, I was seeing this on npm. I think we have
lock file.
Conflicting peer dependency.
Oh.
Yeah. Here's what I did to fix this in another project. I came across this. I did this. and then removed my npm lock file. So I just switched it to pnpm, and that fixed the issue. But let's see if that does it for us. As soon as that's done, I don't think this will take 5 minutes, but it'll take a little bit.
I like Gregory's comment.
There you go.
Post-mortem code review is the best code review. It's definitely like you sit around just like, all right, what have we learned?
Yeah, you can tell how changed my brain is from code reviews, because I saw that as the assignment operator, and that immediately flagged in my brain as something you should do. I want to see triple equals from now on, Gregory. But yeah, there we go. So we got the pnpm lock. Let's get rid of the package lock, so we can let it NX know we're just in pnpm world now.
And Zack is just going to push to main 2 times in one stream.
Of course.
Avert your eyes.
Altan, he's your teammate, not mine.
This is what we deal with.
Yeah.
Zack is on a main branch rampage.
Why do you think they sent me to DevRel, Adrian? Like I just like push things up. Me and Victor just push them straight to main.
Hey, gotta go fast.
Okay, cool. So there we go. We should see a new actions spawning. Just because of what do we trigger on by default, Altan? Is it?
I believe it's just push.
Okay,
Yeah,
we push
so
to
have...
main and pull request.
Yep. So your pull request event will fire when you update the branch. That is the I don't remember the GitHub term. The branch that you are merging into your target branch, when that gets an update. And yeah, on pushes to main. So this will work as well for exactly what you did here.
Perfect. Yeah, that seems like too much work, Jordan. I just
also don't do that at home.
I just let the world like see my mistakes, you know. Force pushing always seems a little scary to me too, but looks like we're failing here too. I imagine we got one step further though. Let's see. Oh, I don't think I ever connected to NX Cloud, so we'll have to do that.
But there's a generator for that, is there not?
Nope. This is telling Zack the problem. You got to claim your workspace.
All I have to do is claim my workspace. And if you missed it, looks like it took the same browser, and I've got it in like full screen. Let's take it out of full screen mode. I'm just trying to be too fancy here. But yeah, it gave me a link to claim it. So that's what I clicked, and that's what got me here. So I'm just gonna connect this, and I think that will do it. One thing I wanted to do. What's that?
Third time's the charm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Let me get over here. One thing I wanted to do here. What's the one to give it a button again? It's something like workflow dispatch, I want to say.
I believe so. Let's hope that Copilot's correct there.
Yeah, I trust it. Adding workflow dispatch. So this should actually give us another free one, just because we're pushing to main again. But this way, at least we can click from now on to rerun it.
And when you said that you didn't connect the NX workspace, I thought of you didn't enable the workspace to begin with. I was just going to say that for us, when we tried NX Cloud, it was just so easy to just turn it on. And so that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think by default now, whenever I do stuff, I just enable it with the NX Cloud runner. So that's cool.
Yep.
That's what gave me like the token and the ability to run things right away. But yeah, no one copy that access token.
Please.
I don't think it's that sensitive, is it, Altan? Like, I'm not too worried about it getting out there.
We have a page on this. We don't recommend leaking your read-write token for open source, but
sure.
You'll be fine probably.
You can always regenerate. Look at that, so fast.
See, that's how good my code is, y'all. I don't think I was a little nervous that we were going to run into like 20 minutes of me like fixing unit tests that I created and didn't bother to like put anything in so they'd fail. But look at that. It's beautiful. And I should have done a PR actually, Altan, you're right. Just so we could have seen like nice little comments that we add there, so you can see like what's going on with all this stuff. I imagine though, I guess I gotta look at the main job if we want to get like a link to how things are in.
You go to NX Cloud and see how things ran.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's over here. So let's show all runs. And yeah, so
There it is.
yeah, there's my tests.
I think you got.
That's why we were able to pass them. I think I just generated them without tests at all.
I think there's no tests, and maybe you didn't get much affected because your last commit would have just been a CI thing.
I did get.
Okay, you got
this.
one.
Yeah, so this was giving me the multiplayer end to end. So this was actually the one that was most interesting, because this one I was actually spinning up multiple different players, so I could have like player 1 in one Chrome window and player 2 in the other using Playwright.
Oh, you're multi-playwright.
I'm multi-playwrighting. It looks like this must have been cached though. Just looking at it, which actually makes
Local
sense because
cache,
I've
right?
definitely hit it before. Yeah, so it makes sense. But there we go.
Regardless, I think you showcase like how easy it is to just set up DTEs in your project just like that.
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at the timings, like total time 46 seconds. I believe installing dependencies was the bulk of that.
Yeah,
we
a
had
quarter
said.
of that time alone was just downloading your cache. So
Right. So there we go. But yeah, we did it, y'all. CI has been achieved. Really the only interesting thing there was just figuring out what was the name of my other tasks that we needed to include in our like ci.yaml file here. Just
And scaling the agents, you just change it to 5 so easily.
Yeah. True that. So there we go. I am satisfied. How are you feeling, Altan?
that was amazing. Other than the push to main, which I'm gonna have to report to my manager.
Yeah, I think Gregory is watching, so I think there might be some issues with like coming directly to main. I believe this is an NX. Yeah, this is a Narwhal workspace. So hopefully Gregory stopped watching at some point there, though. So we're okay. He's our like security audit guy, Adrian. So
okay.
So there
you
we go.
guys are gonna have a fun chat later. I wish I could be there to witness it.
Yeah, we'll be fine, I think.
I witnessed this. I think that's plenty for me.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. It was awesome to see everyone here in the chat. Adrian, great to have you here. Thanks again
so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for talking at NXConf. That was awesome. You did a really great presentation. Go check out our YouTube channel if you'd like to see it and you missed it, because it's
worth it.
It is definitely.
That's a good talk.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're in the clear. Cleggery says we're out of scope. So I think we're also out of time. Let's leave it there. Peace, y'all.
Great. Thanks so
Have
much,
a good week, everyone.